Welcome, everyone. Just to give a little bit of an overview, we are going to, Rachel's co-hosting with me today. I'm NikiAnne, and we are going to share stories of ours from our personal lives, but also be pulling on some of the awareness that we have of some of our other friends who are also mothers, fathers, aunties, uncles, and try to weave just a set of stories. It's not the truth, it's not the only truth. It's just what's going to be coming through us today, and wanting to acknowledge that all of you have that hat on, most likely in some way in your life, and just want to say thank you um, for that relationship to other humans and that place in your lineage, whether that's by blood or by soul clan that you live with and spend life with. Just thank you. And most of the time today will be you'll be hearing mine and Rachel's voices, but we really want to hear what excites you, what interests you, what your questions are, what your reckonings are, what your celebrations, honorings, inquiries are. And so that would be through the chat today. And we have a buddy, colleague, community member, and friend of ours, Debbie, who is doing the tech today. And so she's going to be supporting in that place while Rachel and I possibly just lose ourselves in the conversation for a bit. We seem to have enough capacity, at least historically, and hopefully today, to come back and check in with the chat and have that conversation seed this conversation. So and I want to acknowledge that today we get to be here in physical form, but one of the ways that my relationship with Auntying is it's through relationships that I have had with aunties and sisters being aunties nearby. And so I have an altar here that I want to call in those women. And I'm just going to get weepy over and over today. So thanks for welcoming my tears, and all of yours are welcome too. They flow. Yeah, I'm just going to light a candle as a ritual gesture of setting the intention for our time to be with this relationship that we have to each other, as well as just a calling in of paying attention to what moves through. So asking my heart and soul to be in touch with what is, so that I'm present. And so I'm going to place this candle for us all here on this altar that has Kimchi and Suchi, who are villagers, my predecessors of the village, some aunties of mine who are both now ancestors, and who were very dear to me, and Courtney Brooke, who is a sister. Yeah, a sister of mine and Rachel's, who was a community member who passed 2 years ago this week. Who was a big auntie in our village. So she's here with us today. And Sabanfu Somé, who is also an ancestor, also died 7 years ago this week, who is a teacher of ours, of community, coming from her village in West Africa, in Burkina Faso, from the Dagara people, and a mentor and teacher and auntie of many of us here in the States who got to study her, or maybe you've heard of her books or read her books or found her online. She's an amazing, amazing woman. The only human I know who went through every rite of passage in her community, with her village, on her land. And I think that's so much of the reason why she walked with the potency that she did. She got to have all those initiations and rites of passage in an intact village. And so it's with that embodied integrity and knowledge and security in this world that she offered her gifts through. So Thank you to those aunties of mine and sisters. And I also have a little card on there on my altar from my mom who passed this year. So just calling in and acknowledging the mothers. Yeah. Interestingly, none of those women that I just named, other than my mother, had children of their own that was their offspring. Um, so yeah, they're very specific teachers of mine. Whew. I also want to acknowledge that we called this um, conversation village mothering and village auntying because Rachel's a mother and I'm an auntie, and that's how we identify. And that is not to invisibilize any of the fathers or the uncles out there um, who play a huge, huge role in the balance from the paternal side. And I thank you for coming, dear father. Yeah. So just and we have many fathers and uncles who would have been such a joy to have on this conversation, and it just felt like too many voices in one place at one time. So maybe that'll be another thing we do. But for now, I want to say thank you for showing up, and thank you, Rachel, for doing this, having this conversation with me.
Mhm.
We'll see where it goes. Um, I think bef I just want to seed the opportunity, the invitation to y'all to specifically share those questions and those inquiries. Like I know I said that in a general way, but like really, really, like if a question moves through you or if something pings and resonates with you, like feel free to share that on the chat so it's not lost and you can keep your presence and keep moving forward. And so thank you for that when that comes. I think I'm in. Rachel, you feeling like you want to share anything of your own or open up with some words of Sabon Foods?
I do have these words from Saban Foods, and I just want to say, like, yeah, thank you for showing up to this conversation with me and hosting, and for the great big idea and invitation. But yeah, I want to share these words from Saban Fu, big family. The family in Africa is always extended. You would never refer to your cousin as cousin because that would be an insult. So your cousins are your sisters and brothers. Your nieces are your children. Your uncles are your fathers. Your aunts are your mothers. Your sister's husband is your husband, and your brother's wife is your wife. Children are encouraged to call other people outside the family mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers. This concept of the big family is really helpful. I remember when I was a kid, I had the choice of a different father every day, depending on my mood. So if I wanted one of my uncles to be my father for the day, I would focus all my attention on that person and ignore the others. And the others wouldn't take it personally because they saw it as an opportunity for me to decide what I wanted. This allows a large number of people in the village to acknowledge the child and to see her or his spirit. And that is from the Spirit of Intimacy, Ancient Teachings in the Ways of Relationships. Yeah, well, I think like that quote, speaks to me. And I thought of it today because of, like, I did share with you earlier, like, ooh, actually having a little bit of a challenging parenting day, you know, and the healthy redundancy in that large family, in that village parenting, um, for me, uh, how do I want to say it? Feels it's like a safety net. It's like not a cop out card, but it's like, oh, there are going to be gaps in my capacity. There are going to be gaps in my ability to show up as a parent and just in who I am as a human. And this diversity and abundance of healthy adult relationships, I think that my children have with others, there's like a security there that they are going to be held and they can be held in different ways, um, and learn different skills from different people. and that my limited set of skills is not the only ones that they're getting or seeing. Um, yeah, it's a really, yeah, really beautiful thing. And I feel so grateful for the people in our community, like you, NikiAnne, and others, and how Courtney Brooke. She also showed up in many of the children's lives that way. Um, yeah, are just intentionally very into choosing a path of like supporting and tending and befriending and playing with, yeah, our children. So yeah, like thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like you have spoken to it being an intentional choice, and I I was introduced to this idea of auntying really by you and Courtney Brooke, and um, where, yeah, where did
Mm-hmm.
this choice come from? Where this path, this intention, to fill this need? Like, yeah, what did that grow from in your life?
Mm. Yeah, I want to. I'll share about that, but the place to start is with thank you for choosing to be a mother. I don't know
Mm.
how conscious that choice was or not. It doesn't matter. Like you said yes to birth, and that like there isn't such a role and relationship as an auntie without a mother.
Hmm.
So I just like that. That feels really big for me. Like um, I just, yeah, I feel really cautious to perpetuate the invisibility of mothers. And
Yeah.
so like I kind of and of fathers, and I think I've heard that there's this way of communicating that can be like, oh, good job, father, thank you for showing up, father, as if it's like this um
Yeah.
like choice, and maybe it is more of a choice because of that bodily relationship, but just like um anyway, there's something there of just not of like that thank you not getting extended to the mother as much as it's deserved. And I think that that same relationship of the mother father like imbalance easily gets transferred to the mother auntie. Like, oh, auntie, like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I didn't like sign up since birth with someone.
Oh, are we just gonna cry through this entire
Yeah, just take it
conversation?
in, take it in. Yeah. Anyway, that just feels like a precursor to any answer I'd give. To not tell too long of a story, but being a young adult in my young 20s, like I just assumed that I would be having kids by 25. Like I remember being like, I'll have kids but at 25. And then da 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 da. And then 25 passed and then 30 passed. And I was like, oh. And then, into my mid 30s. And the whole time, I guess I would say that like my words always were, I want kids, I don't want kids. Curious how it'll go. And I just ended up never choosing to have kids. And it was in this last relationship that I'm in, this current one, who's with someone who I'm now married to, that at that threshold of trying to like squeeze values and alignment between us, like out of us being like, he mostly doesn't want kids. So I really had to sit with how bad do I want kids?
Mhm.
And choosing like, well, am I going to choose out of this relationship to go see if I might want kids? So I really like through this beloved man's clarity, I took some years, it took me some years to really
Mm.
um, get clear in myself, so there was no room for resentment towards him.
Yeah.
And it was a huge grieving process, huge scrutiny, like because I know it could go either way, and there's joys and sacrifices either way. And um, the older I got, every whatever month or year, um, it just moved me more in the how about not. And so at that threshold of like, are we going to do this together? He and I, and the kid, are we having kids question was a little cleared. But my question to him was like, if you're not down for kids, are you down for family?
Mm.
And what I mean by that is like,
Yeah.
if we could just stereotype and project out there, or my projections and stereotypes of like some fanciful romantic situation is like the crazy Greek or Jewish or Italian, like, what? It's always so much family. Like, that's what I long for. I want the chaos. I want the like abundance of family. And without skipping a beat, he said, yeah, I'm down with that. I was like, okay, like you will consciously choose to be an uncle and, sign up for that. And he said, yes. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And then like I lit up of like, I had an accountability buddy. So yeah, that's kind of that clear decision. But I do want to say one other point that was really salient for me um, in that process. And I remember it was a February, one winter gathering with women, and I wept and wept and wept. And they were all mothers who I was with. And I was just like, oh, like I mostly am fearful of regretting not having kids.
Mm.
Like, what's the regret about though? And I said, not taking a path that's gonna cook me to
Oh,
be elder and the ancestor I want to be.
yeah.
And I'm scared of being a privileged brat that I never grow out of being because something didn't humble me. And they said, these women, they were kind of laughing, but they sweetly were said, well, parenting is not a foolproof track, like pathway to wise elder. It is a great one. It is one that a lot of people take because of that squeeze, that choiceless situation day after day, for this long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they said it's not the only path, but it means that if you don't choose it, you'll just need to consciously put adversity in your path. You'll consciously need to choose the teaching grounds for the lessons that you're wanting to learn. And I was like, okay, that fits me. I choose that stuff all the time already. So anyway, it just gave me a language and a framework to like claim a hell yes to this life that didn't feel like I was robbing myself of the joy and absolving myself of the responsibility of showing up for hard things for the next generation.
Mm.
So thanks
Mm-hmm.
for hearing all that. That's just, yeah, it's part of this dear story that I didn't know what I was signing up for either, like, and that I still have to consciously choose into most of the time because I don't live with it. And that's something that's different from your life from mine. Yeah. So I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that was fully the answer to your question. I don't fully remember what the question was, but I think it was, why did I choose or how did I choose auntyhood?
Yeah, no, you answered it in a multifaceted way, which I really appreciate, like all the forces that shaped you and the conditions in which you've moved forward with this. Um, yeah, there's just something that I heard recently, and it was that, like our culture thinks of motherhood, or perceives motherhood as like a singularity, right? You're a mother or you are not a mother. If you are a mother, you are the mother of this child. If you are a woman with a child, you are a mother, like end, period, stop. And I think what this whole conversation brings up for me, um, is no, it's a multiplicity for everyone. I really appreciated your words and your thank you, of recognizing the choice of motherhood, and taking that long path. Um, but also, or no buts, just yeah, thank you for the acknowledgement. But yeah, on one hand, there's an opening up of like, and I am so many more other things than just a mother. And then on the other side, it's like I'm also not the only mother. And just because someone does not have a child that they call theirs, like, doesn't mean they're not mothering or fathering or uncling or whatever. And it's this like lack of shared responsibility in our culture, like has so many painful consequences, like I think on the mother-child relationship and on mothers out on everyone, right? This like fragmented situation, this isolated, like almost like ownership driven situation is a giant lost opportunity. And like, my motherhood journey has been sort of split in half with that in a way. I came here with my 4 children, as a single parent at the times when they were between the ages of 5 and had just turned 12. Um, and so I have this like duality of experience of like, this is what it was like in the nuclear family situation. And I really also felt that very intensely. Like, for the first few years of my journey of motherhood, I had a lot of family around to some degree. And then maybe for the first 7 years, and then the next 7 years, we had moved far away from family. Um, and then this last 8 years, like I've been living in community. Um, and I think there are the ideas maybe of what people think. Yeah, I'm curious what people's ideas are actually of like what they think raising kids in community is like, what this co-parenting is like, what this aunting situation is like. Um, and then like having this taste of the reality of it. But anyway, I guess I just told that little bit, just like I've had this full spectrum of experience to like compare and contrast. And there is real beauty in this communal situation and so much opportunity and so much potential that I just like don't even know if we've tapped yet. We're just getting there. Um, and there's also like it's just a different set of challenges as well that comes with parenting in that like more like carefully curated nuclear family situation.
Mhm, mhm,
um, a lot of input, a lot of different points of view. We're all coming with our cultural baggage around parenting and family, and bringing that to community with us.
mhm.
Yeah, I wonder if that piqued
Yeah.
anything for you.
Yeah. I mean, I thank you for acknowledging this singularity
Mm,
trip hazard that we have. That's just a false picture painted. And, I want to, you're also an auntie, also just like, they're not even a binary between you and I right now. Like you've got dual role. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's interesting. I love the fact that there's a gratitude centered culture that we have at Earthaven and that a lot of people are practicing in their lives. And I think that's reflective in your sharing, of how your day was hard with mothering and, this redundancy and the support and the helps and it's true. And I also just know that, you know, there our reality is like you said, like we're on the journey, like we're failing at that at meeting our ideals all the time.
mhm,
And just that like that's what this conversation for me is about, is like how can we be with the complexity, the multiplicity of all these realities at once. Like, yes, let's celebrate what there is to be celebrated. And in that same breath or the next breath, how can we acknowledge that our needs aren't getting met? Yours, parents' needs are not getting met, even in a village community setting all the
right,
time.
right,
And and I think that's really important for those who aren't living in community right now to take in, like have a sobriety check on, which is like, it is not the cure all answer. It's a different it's a trade-off of issues. And yet, yes, let's keep practicing, let's keep striving.
mhm,
Like we I've heard like, you know, really what our soul longs for in that initial welcoming ritual is 40 pairs of eyes staring back at us as this baby emerging. And like translate that through time, like this term allo parent is a term that gets used, allo meaning other in Greek. And it's an allo parent is someone who's providing like primary essential care for a young one that's not their offspring. And
Mm,
when I heard that we historically, or you know, our ancestors, like ideally we have, they had, we have 30 allo parents per child.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's the number. When I think of that, I'm like, oh, now I don't beat myself up for like not being there for all of the needs of the day. You
Yeah.
know, if like, wow. So like, yes, like we are giving thanks for the 5, 6, 7, 8 allo parents that, you know, your children, someone's child might have in their life, but like 30. And so what I want to like split that hair about is, yeah, we've got 115-ish people at Earthaven, and about 25% of them are youth.
Hmm.
So if you do the numbers, yeah, I bet you there is about 30 adults around, or 30. It's not even have to be adults. It could be cousins, it could be siblings. It doesn't have to be adults. So an older sibling might be an allo parent for a younger sibling. And I, you know, actually that is the case in Rachel's family too. Her kids have age differentiation. So just even if they're around, it doesn't mean that we're actually engaging in that essential primary care relationship. And so that's, I think, this like where the pain might lie, like
Hmm.
for parents in the world, not just in a community setting, is like, oh, it feels like it's right there, but it's not,
Yeah.
you know? And so, um, and so that I'm just like acknowledging what I imagine it feels like on that side, and then on, you know, on the side of one who doesn't have a child,
Hmm.
who is has a choiceless path every day practically, you know. I mean, sure, I've
Hmm.
got my responsibilities, but it's not literally a screaming child being like, help. Like this relationship of kindness to myself while also, and like, you know, honoring what my needs are, but also leaning in to the edges of inconvenience. And like that's for me this gray area that's like not talked about or like confusing in this like
Hmm.
we're trying to repair um, martyr relationships with service and work that hurt ourselves. That's like taking from a well that's deficient. Like, you know, I want to source from wellness.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the children in my life needs something. So, like, just for me, there feels like a commitment to that stretch that you parents are modeling. So you
Crying
asked
over here.
You asked who my teachers are, and yes, I've got some
Mhm.
teachers who aren't parents, but actually it's you parents that I'm trying to study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that statement about that I want to act from resource, oh, it really hooked me. Yeah, as a parent, I want to act from resource.
Absolutely.
I mean, we just have a lot to remember, you know? We have a lot of culture to piece back together, we humans. And we are like taking some steps forward. But thank you. Like I do feel grateful for the way like you especially and others have shown up in my children's lives. I mean, I couldn't ask for a more wise auntie. I really like deeply appreciate you. And yeah, I appreciate you naming the gap also of like still in the day to day, it's not the 30 sets of eyes, but it's the best thing that we can do right now. And that's, I take that and I see that. And it like does feel like a balm to me. The effort and the showing up, the intention, it's like hopeful, right? I mean, there's a lot that I could mourn about my motherhood journey. I remember, after my fourth child was born and I had three other children, under the 6 and younger and being alone at home with them. And I remember those first few days or first few weeks or even months. Um, yeah, and that was maybe the first time like I was growing and shifting and changing and opening and softening. And it was the first time I really wished I could have had help.
Mhm.
Maybe before that, it didn't even occur to me that it was available to me. And I was just doing what needed to be done. And I'm like that in my life, like I'm okay with like putting the yoke on and pulling the plow. Like I'm, that kind of person. Yeah, I get taking a moment to
Mhm.
mourn for myself that there weren't any aunties there. I
Yeah.
had mom friends at that point in time. And we did spend time together, and that eased that burden a little bit, but we were all in it doing the same thing, And so there was like camaraderie and friendship, and the mirroring of each other that's really valuable.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyhow,
Yeah.
and I see here, like at Earthaven, like it's really, I see us showing up in each other's lives. I see us showing up, with meal trains for like new parents and childcare. And, yeah, I'm like, wow, what would I have done with that amount of childcare? Like, but allowing moms to live more full lives and to be more healthy and for there to be a safety net. And like you said, like still it's not enough. Like we're putting drops in the empty bucket, right? Um, but it's something, and I want to name that. Like it's not a community utopia, but it's something.
Yeah. You're reminding me of my discovery into community in suburbia.
Mm,
Um, so I was, I had left Earthaven. I had been at Earthaven for my work exchange. I had all these ideals in my head, all the cool buzzwords that led me into new resources of study, independent study, whether that was, sustainable forestry or fermentation or tantra or conscious relationships or NVC, whatever the thing was that was like, oh, there's all these subculture, playgrounds. But so, now I had my community experience in Earthaven. I'm out in the world. I live on a sustainable agricultural CSA farm in California. And I'm leaving that farm. I'm leaving that relationship. And I was like, everyone's talking about community and land, and I want to be on land in community. And I didn't see where, but I was like, okay, I guess I'll live with my friends down the road in suburbia. I'll rent a room in their house. And I think it was like the first day I was there. I was like, oh my gosh, there it was the whole time staring at me. Community. Like it didn't look how I thought it would look. It was, it was like a step in the direction, but like not everyone's ideal. It was
mhm.
a 3-bedroom house, total mainstream ranch house, just like suburbia built in the 60s. And it was a couple with their 2 kids, a man with his part-time son, and me. And there was a preschool that got ran out of the house 3 days a week. It was mayhem. It was
Uh-huh.
beautiful. Earth's, like Waldorf style community trying mayhem. And I
You were
ate it
living in a
up.
preschool. Is that
I
what I
was
just
living in a
heard?
preschool with 2 families, time, full time. And what was so cool was we were laughing all the time. Like most of the time, it was 4 adults to 2 kids, or 4 adults to 3 kids sometimes. Great ratios in our home, which is what is the difference between a lot of folks um, who are practicing community from their single family homes, which is what is happening at Earthaven too. Don't let me fool you.
Yeah.
I never had, oh, and then my now husband moved in with us. So then we had six, what is that? However many adults, 5 adults to 3 kids. None of our lives have ever been better. my husband and I weren't getting in fights because we had all this interruption. And I had a
Mhm.
girlfriend to talk to, and he was tired of talking. The kids just had whoever was the most likely to do the thing they wanted to do, adult in the house to like,
Mhm.
have the fun they wanted. And it didn't look like the ideal. And I just want to like say that story because I think there's this like binary of like community and it's called this, or this.
Mhm.
And then there's the community that's like, it is what it is. And it's just as juicy, just as rich learning grounds, maybe even more helpful because it doesn't have all the pretentiousness of intentionality.
Yeah.
That
Well,
comes. Yeah. So anyway.
well, I mean, I think that's what we're doing here on a larger scale, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like, here at Earthaven, it's
But
like,
we dupe ourselves to think it's something more grandiose.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, on the family front, right? And on
Yeah,
the
on the
kids
family
front,
front. Yeah.
yeah, like there's
It is
not,
more grandiose on the other.
we're just getting to the point, like that issue is like coming up to the surface, and maybe we're wanting to try to be more intentional about that, and to think about it in intentional ways. But like what you described, I'm like, that's kind of how it is here, you know? And like, um, we definitely, we have what, like 3 adults to every child, I think is maybe our ratio. And, I'm like, if I use myself an example, it's like, yeah, I have other adults to talk to. So I'm not lost in like just being mom all day, and I can be like more of a whole person. And then my kids like leave the house, and then they go out and they like find some other adult doing something interesting, and then like attach themselves to that person for a little while. Or I think about the kids in the summer who are like running around in this little clan together, and they're just like knocking on every door in my neighborhood to see who's going to take them to Paradise Pond. Which Paradise Pond is like a swimming pond that's at the top of the hill of the neighborhood that I live on. And it's like, yeah, it sounds a little bit like this preschool situation, and especially when the kids were a little younger than they are now. I mean, we have all range of children here, from like just over 18 months old to 19, 20-ish. But there is this like mass group that now they're like in their young teens. But when they were a few years younger, um, it was like a shared food situation too. They would just like show up at one house or the other and just like hang out until they got fed or expect to be fed. And like us parents, we would kind of talk about it in the background to make sure that it was a little even. Like, okay, yeah, I realize like my kids have eaten macaroni and cheese at your house 3 days this week. Like, sure, like send your kids, kick them all out of your house and send them my way, and I will feed them something next time. Um, yeah, and sometimes, we had to work it out a little more carefully, but it kind of sounds like that unintentional but lovely situation that you had. Like something organic is just happening, and arising out of the chaos of like, there's a tribe of 20 children in this village, and sometimes they feel like a grazing mob in the summer to like all the fruit trees and berry bushes. And yeah.
Well, and in that relationship with like leaning into the edge of inconvenience being like where the reward is,
Mm,
I kind of want to name like the different housing, some of the neighborhood styles and housing styles. It's like Rachel lives in a very like a hamlet, like a little tight neighborhood where there's lots of houses and they mostly still have a common bathhouse that they share. So they're
mhm.
leaving their primary home for essential needs getting met. And
Yeah.
so that creates an intersection of people like, coming together randomly and inconveniently, I got to go outside in the cold to do this, essential life tending that breaks up that hazard that the single family home segregation model is. Like I live in a neighborhood where, each family unit has their own home with their own bathroom and their own kitchen. And so it lends itself towards that,
Mhm.
leaning into the comfort versus into the edge and finding each other on the pathways. Um, and so we have to be more intentional than her neighborhood does because they're crossing and just seeing each other in an organic way more often. And then
Right.
there's neighborhoods that are just less populated. And, it's a big deal, I think, for families to move out into the outskirts because of that, how much more effort it is for that connection.
Mhm.
And just that, I don't know how your all's lives are, but I have a pretty scheduled life. And I get exhausted by that because, um, again, it's back to like me being in control of all the interactions versus living in this way where I have less control. And so I actually have to build in time, and I do build in time where I'm just in the community that day, and like, walking the path and making a date with someone, but like finding each other. And now some of the kids are of ages where they're communicating on their own, which is cool. So, I've got independent access to all of Rachel's kids because now they are old enough to like have an email address or have a text phone number. Um, but yeah, just that. I just want to acknowledge that how modern America is set up is to you need to schedule everything because you don't live with anybody other than your family.
Mhm.
It perpetuates that segregation and isolation.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna reflect on my experiences, like, before moving to community, but here, like, in the Asheville, Black Mountain area, and just sort of reflecting back on what you were saying, and, yeah, I mean, we had there are also some choices I think that I made in my life and that people can make in their lives, that does support a more community vibe, even if you can't be living in community. And I know that everyone has different circumstances and has to make different choices for different reasons. And I was privileged enough and made some sacrifices in order to homeschool my kids. And then also there's the fact that I had 4 kids. Like I just have a community in my house, right? Like that's just kind of how the vibe is. But we would get together, like we would find other families that shared our values, that were homeschooling in the style that we did, and get together. Like, I think we were getting together like one day a week, if I can remember correctly, like for homeschooling. And then the other day was just like we were hanging out. We would just go like post up at the park all day or whatever. But we got very deeply entwined with each other's lives. And, my family hasn't participated in that group for 7-ish years now. After moving to Earthaven, we kind of transitioned. The drive into town was too much. My life became scheduled. My life was not actually so scheduled before I moved to community, right? Um, uh, and yeah, I guess I'm wanting to say, lives became intertwined and we were supportive of each other. Oh, our kids, that's what I was trying to get at. Our kids are still in touch. Like I'm in touch with 1 or 2 of the moms every once in a while these days. I just had a tea date with one last month and it was really sweet to catch up. But these kids like still have this community and they're still seeing each other and talking to each other and staying connected through almost a decade. And I think like I didn't really acknowledge and couldn't fully see what was happening at that time. And I also thought like community was this thing that I was trying to achieve over here. But like my kids had and built community and like deep relationships that like carried them through a decade almost. And 8 years of childhood is a really long time. I mean, from 12 to 20, that's whoa, lots of big changes there. So I just want people to know, like, you don't. There is what happens organically when you live together and when you're sharing spaces and infrastructure, like NikiAnne is saying. Like, yeah, then it just kind of happens, and you don't have to work at it. But there are ways that we can set up our lives to support community and shared experience and shared reality and co-parenting, even if it is in more limited ways.
Yeah, and Rachel, kind of acknowledging that this theme is interdependence that we're talking about. And I
Mm-hmm.
think in implicit and explicit ways, we've been weaving a story or a number of stories that are painting pictures between us humans. But can you speak to how what the interdependent relationship has been for you with the natural world in raising kids? Because it seems like it's been high from my vantage point and a really important part of your family culture. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's commonplace, like assumed to be commonplace, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I want to cry again.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think I want to explain why the rush of emotion is I have this deep love, and there's some, it might call it nostalgia or something. I don't know. There's just this period in my family's life that was so rich in connection to the natural world, and how it was such a teacher for me and just changed me dramatically as a human. Um, and that came from a time when, let's see, my children were from 6 months old to almost 7. We moved to Alabama. Um, I was in a strain. I mean, I'm Southern by birth. I'm from Southeast Tennessee. But moving to Alabama, there was just like a deep level of estrangement from culture, and family and friends were hard to come by, and like minded people to spend time with. And most of our days, my husband was working a lot. My husband at that time, he was working out of town for weeks at a time. And so I was really solo parenting these children. And um, it started out maybe as a coping mechanism, to go out, like take the children outside when things are hard, when it's like not working, like take the children outside. That's always been kind of like a mantra for me, you know. I wish I could remember that for myself. I'm thinking right now, like in reparenting myself, like, Rachel, when it's hard in here, like take yourself outside.
Mm.
um
Mm.
but that became the basis of our homeschooling, honestly. I discovered that Alabama is the most beautiful place that I have ever lived, and I really fell in love with the world. And like taking my children out hiking, and then, my 3-year-old, my son, like he has always had these keen eyes. He sees what no one else sees in minute detail. And so I started learning about the creatures that live under the rocks in the creek bed. And I started learning about insects. And I got presented when he was like 2 years old. He just like walks up to me with a snake in his hand. And I think of all my children in this particular way. He was a leader, and he was a teacher for the rest of us, but we were all really blossoming in this culture, I guess, that we created for ourselves, of like, what are we learning today and what are we doing today, like translated to where are we going in the world today. Even if
Mm.
it was just like in the front yard, like we used to have a practice of like the kids would border a 1 foot square place in the
Mm.
yard, and we would just like check it every day, and like what was going on there, and like what was different. And like sometimes we were watching ants. And sometimes we would drive to like a longleaf pine forest to see these specific woodpeckers. Or sometimes we would go, there was a swamp with a boardwalk in it, like 10 minutes from our house. And we would just go there. And like it was this whole other ecosystem. And this wonder erupted in my entire family. Um,
Mm. Mm.
and they all became so closely connected and in tune with the other creatures of the world that were not human, and the other beings. Um, my daughters spent their downtime creating their own bird field guides. Um, and yeah,
Mm.
you just like, yeah. And I see that in all, and the youngest one was just like on my back all the time, just along for whatever ride that we were on. She was probably a baby up to like 3 years old at this point in time. But I see like this period of years, and like the result of that in my children, and the way that they move through the world, and what their interests are, and how that, like, they're committed to places, in
Mm.
some ways that even, like, I am surprised by. And, like, they feel connection and they want to tend. Um, yeah, I think that's one big difference. Creativity is another difference, but also, like, that the care and the wonder and the love before the world came first, before this concern or fear of the world happened. Like, as we get older and we start being introduced to like the realities of what's happening in the world. And they had this solid place of like love and connection and understanding and belonging in that ecosystem to like move forward from. And I think that also impacts their relationships with other humans. I couldn't draw that direct path, but I see that an understanding of a web.
Mm.
And community has become very important to my children. Like as I saw, like, as my oldest, they're 19, about to be 20 years old, and they have both moved out of my house, and they both went through a process in their choices and what they were and were not willing to let go of as far as this like community and family. And I think the choices that they make or have made are really clear on how they value that. And it is somehow related in a way that I wish I could connect to this like tight family culture that we had that was born out of this feeling like we were not strange observers in the world and of nature, but like a part of it,
Mhm. Yeah, engaging.
That was a lot. Sorry. I just went on.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I wanna like say something connected to what you were just describing about your kids and to like get me back to this origin story of how did I learn to be an auntie. Um,
Mm,
but just to like as a facilitator of groups um, and often teenagers or historically teenagers, I had some amazing facilitator mentors that said like never judge how you're doing by the face of a teenager.
oh no.
You're going to think you're failing and not having any place of connection. Do not let that be your litmus test on how you're doing. And I laugh and like, oh, so good. It's like humbling. So, um, you know, uh, some of Rachel's kids have kind of like a poker face. They've got like some fun, moody, personality that does not give way that I love community and I love you and it's also joyous. Like, so it's really sweet to like get to know people on deeper levels and so yeah, just like that story of them as teenagers takes me back to my teenage days or and not even just teenage but just youth and I so recently someone asked me who were the influential adults in your life growing up.
Hmm.
So I like laundry listed it. Aunties, uncles, teachers, mentors. Yeah, sure, mom and dad. Yeah, obviously. But like um coaches, youth pastors, like I just had like, oh, oh, they made me just like feel so good when I remembered them. And when I looked at that list,
Hmm.
the similar like if I could draw parallels between all of those relationships in me,
Hmm.
what I found was they gave me a crumb of presence.
Hmm.
Like it literally wasn't more than crumbs. And I don't mean to insult them, but more of like, I remember a conversation we had in the hallway in high school, or I remember this moment, like whatever was memorable to me, like the moments were very, very like short and minimal, but they were
Yeah.
super impactful. And it was just this aha for me looking back as an adult to say, just keep showing up, NikiAnne. Like
Hmm.
that's enough.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that just must be enough because that was enough for what you got.
Hmm.
And I was like, wow, that is some like permission and kindness to myself that I would not otherwise easily give. And so it's not to say I don't reckon with like, you know, the the pain of not meeting my longing and ideals of showing up for the next generation and my friends' families, including the parents. Um, but it's just to say like just stop the analysis of like is this good enough and should I be doing more, just keep freaking showing up.
Hmm.
I want to just acknowledge Courtney Brooke back there, she's right over here on my shoulder, that she modeled for me in a way that I don't think anyone had, even in my youth, of just being together. And she would live her life with whoever was around. So whether it was a 3-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 30-year-old, she'd be like, all right, I'm going to do laundry. You want to come? Yeah, I got to stop by the store before that. And oh, you want to go get coffee? Yeah, let's do that. And she would share her inner world in a way that was appropriate for the ages, but she modeled how to be a forward moving, engaged human. And, there was this little girl who was like one of her soulmates who, she met when she was 3. And this little kid would crawl under her desk and the little kid would draw and like do whatever under the desk next to
Mm-hmm.
Courtney Brooke while Courtney Brooke's doing her administrative work for Earthaven. Like
Mm-hmm.
just being together. Um, and so
Mm-hmm.
that for me, like it helps make more space in my day for others. I don't have to go like, what am I going to do with them?
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, and I think to kind of draw it to that parallel of that starting point I had of don't judge like a teenager's face to know how you're doing. I I've spent a lot of time with Rachel's older ones mostly, but in one of them we ended up we took a trip to New Orleans together. And I mean that trip and then this trip to the thrift store in Asheville once. These 2 trips, I just would have thought they weren't having fun and that they didn't want to be with me. And I didn't take it personally. I was just like trying to study the situation. But like when checking in on a deeper level, they were like, I'm great. And so she was my teacher for being present and just going with the flow and enjoying the company. Like she also didn't need to like be entertained and express all the great entertainment. And it was just lovely. So like it's helped me to be a more authentic version of myself and allow others to be authentic versions of them and like just be together in that. Just the silence becomes less awkward. The the need for reassurance becomes less often. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, that's just part of my healing that these younger ones have offered me. And um, yeah, it really is a gift. And then it's this like reciprocal relationship the whole
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that particular child of mine that we're speaking of, I think the way that I think about it is she at this point in time, like she really helps you check your impulse for emotional caretaking.
Mm.
Like that part of that is like the lesson, like, are you okay? And just like, I am vibing over here. Like I'm absolutely fine. Um, yeah, it's a cute little story, but yeah, I mean, even as a mom, like the faces of teenagers are scary. Like, I have no idea what's happening over there, how you're receiving what I'm saying. If you're having a good time, are you furious with me right now? Is this totally fine? Like, I most of the time don't have a clue. Um, it's challenging to navigate, right? And I mean, I wonder, like, as a mom, if it's me getting older, if it is that, or if it's the circumstances. But I find like, yeah, they've taught me like some level of self-confidence and bravery. And also like I need to take time for myself. Like even more so maybe than when they were young children. That it's like, oh no, I need to like go step back, like make sure I know where my center is, because no one here is trying to appease me or yeah, entertain me or I don't know, raising teenagers requires and cultivates a level of resilience that I did not have before.
Mm. Well, and that's kind of that's a gift I'm getting, but yeah, you're like kind of back that choiceless path to choice path. You know,
Hmm.
you're getting
Right.
cooked that way, and it's like I can just not get cooked. And it was interesting. I was holding a team fire with some other friends, and at this teen fire, um, this other adult man that I was with said, y'all know that like adults fear you, right? And all the teenagers, all of them, and they're like awesome, cool, stone-faced badassery. We're like, what are you talking about? They fear us. And that vulnerability came out, that tenderness.
Uh-huh.
Like they had no idea. And he was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, they don't know what to do around you. And they're like, the teens were confused at this statement.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
just revealed so much of that stage they're in of posturing to belong and therefore not being able to, they're managing their world so much for safety that they don't even, and they haven't been there, they haven't been to adulthood, so they don't know what they haven't experienced it, it's all projection. And so it was just a cool experience to hear um, some group of kids that we don't know what to do, we're awkward, like we're barely out of our awkward teenage selves ourselves. So
Right.
yeah.
None
So
of us
anyway,
want to go back there. I mean, I think that's part of the fear of teenagers, right?
and that's where the growing up for me is like, okay, if I face this, I can actually heal these parts up and they're not as scary. I don't have so little resources. I have a little more resources to be with that teenager. Yeah, and I was listening to this conversation that Kimberly Ann Johnson and Stephen Jenkinson had, which if you don't know those characters, they're worth looking up. And Kimberly Ann Johnson is like in her 40s and a parent and has a podcast called Sex, Birth, Trauma. And Stephen Jenkinson's maybe in his 70s and a writer and elder and um, does a lot of work with community and death and grief and culture. And in that conversation, this mother was asking like, what am I not doing? How do I do it better? Well, any thoughts on this? Or, maybe that wasn't her question, but something about an inquiry to him. And he said his thoughts are that the most you can do, I kind of internalized it as he was speaking to the older ages, but maybe he meant for the whole parenting journey. I'm not sure. But he said the most you can do is create a space that your child can walk through and emerge into the world
Mm.
well. Like you can't actually give them the teachings and tell them and they hear what you want them to hear. You hold the space, you create a world that ushers them in through. And
Mhm.
so that I had that imagery when you were talking about going out into the natural world, and that was just this, you were holding space for the world that
Mhm.
provided that rich learning ground. And
Mhm.
for me, that was just maybe a permission that we don't give ourselves as adults, whether it's parents or aunties or uncles.
Mhm.
Um, it's like a surrender of control. It's like that's not the job at hand. We're missing the mark. If we think the job is to do this, this, and this, and this, and this to them or for them, with it's like it's actually a little wider, but it's still intentional. It's still conscious.
Mhm. Well, I link it back to what you were saying about Courtney Brooke, right? And yeah. I mean, she did have this like special, she had figured out some magic ingredient around connection, but just sharing our lives with them. Like we do so often, I think, look at children and teenagers and like we're trying to fill them up. We're trying to fill them up with information. We're trying to fill them up with our values. We are trying to educate them. And our culture is really, really pushes in that direction. And I have felt a lot of insecurity over the years of like not stressing that enough, maybe in some
Mm.
way. But especially as I curated a space for my children to like live life. But I guess what I wanted to say about Courtney Brooke is she was just like opening up normal life. It's just being with them. It doesn't have to be intentional. You don't have to be teaching them anything. You don't have to be having deep conversations, right? I mean, probably some of those meaningful time I've spent with my kids, like just it's shocking to me. And I like generally realize it afterwards because it's just a mundane moment, right? And I've joked recently that like my kids never want to talk to me unless I'm trying to go to sleep or I have somewhere to go. But it's like I gotta remember, I'm like, they may not be 3 years old anymore, but they still need my quality of presence. And
Mhm.
so I'll be late to that thing because this is the time that my son chose to share his inner world with me.
Mm.
And so, yeah, just like Courtney Brooke, just like, or like, I think you've taken my kids to run errands with you in town or something. Like, just being with them and yeah, seeing you being an adult, but that like you care enough to share your space with them and like see what emerges, like they always, when given the space, they have something to fill it with. Like, well, on their own terms. you know.
Yeah,
Um
you asked like, you said that this was a learned thing of like auntie, like you said something like that, like it was later in life, this concept that like you could have support
yeah.
and that there's this relationship that's bigger than the nuclear family. And um,
Mhm.
yeah, I want to acknowledge and give thanks to a mentor of mine, um, Dan Fontaine with Wilderness Youth Project out in California. And I was working with that organization. It's a nature connection focused program, mostly after school program when I was working for it for youth. Um, and so, and the thing that he seeded in me that absolutely has fed my imperative of taking up this role of auntie seriously in a village context, particularly, he said, with this work of program based nature connection for families and children, our aim is to work ourselves out of a job.
Mhm.
Right now, as a program, we are surrogates for the absent village system of aunties and uncles.
Yeah.
And it just was so humbling. Like, I'm trying to make my job irrelevant. Awesome. And so
Mhm.
when I got to Earthaven, I was, you know, Earthaven itself is that same concept. Earthaven is a surrogate for the village
Mhm.
that we don't have anymore and we want to move back to. Intentional community is that scaffolding or those training
Mhm.
wheels back to village systems,
Yeah.
culture, habits.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so in the village, in our community, in this eco village, it itself is a experiment of, and then we have programs within it. I was running a nature-based program at Earthaven. We run school of integrated living programs, educational programs. There's all kinds of programs and structures. And for me, I'm actually I don't know who maybe saw that video that I shared on Instagram, but I said that this role of being an auntie is one of the most meaningful and valuable hats that I wear or roles that I participate in
Mm.
my life. And we'd have to unpack that. It'd be a whole other conversation. But to say that, I'm needing to recognize right now, where am I leaning, um, working with my strengths versus leaning into my edges. And
Mm.
working with my strengths is still producing programs. And leaning into my edges is dropping those formal, usually livelihood connected roles and just showing up for the relationships more.
Mm.
And so that's
Mhm.
like this, like in the present moment transition I'm making, being like, walk the talk more, like make space in your life for these relationships. And it's not too much time even in a given week. But what I'm like intending to feed is just a strong enough cord of connection so that when it matters in some person's
Mhm.
life, that there's
Mhm.
enough connection and trust to like know that there's someone to swing back to for some support.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what that enoughness is, but I'll say that yes, I have presence on some level for all the village children, but I have a very committed capacity and relationship with those that like we feel called to each other. That youth and me, like we're into each other, and those are the ones I'm feeding. So like that for me doesn't make it a chore. It is like another
Mhm.
friend in my life. That yes, when I say
Mhm.
friend, I'm constantly maintaining awareness of the role that I have, that we are of different generations, and that everything I bring to, that not everything is appropriate to bring to them at at all stages. And that's,
Right.
it's a gray area. It's hard to figure out sometimes, but
I think I just wanted to like uplift you for a moment. Like this has been on my mind in a couple of your sharings, and it is just yeah, the grace and the generosity and the bravery, just the guts to make some of the choices that you've made. Like when you were talking about, the teenagers and to not judge by their faces, and like most people like shy away from that and they move away from that, and you like move towards it, and like these intentional choices of um where's the inconvenience, where's the discomfort, and the leaning into that. um yeah, like I guess in this moment I just want to be a voice that says, oh yeah, you're being refined, you're being cooked, you're being simmered. And I feel really grateful to have you so intentionally or casually showing up in my children's lives. And I know that there have been words of wisdom, and there have also been just playful, giggle, silly, goofy times with you that like my kids cherish. And I cherish that as well. That is, it's such, like I started out this conversation, like as a mom, like it's a comfort for me to know, like you said, you keep that thread of connection just strong enough that they know where they can go for help or care or a little affection and attention. And it's like a precious gift, not just to me, like to community. And you're moving away from the form and the function and the structure and into the relationship. And I just want to say, at this point in time, in this particular community, that's medicine. So thank you.
the journey that I've had with all of Rachel's family, Rachel and I have found a friendship through what started with my relationship with some of her kids,
Yeah.
and that it wasn't natural and easy out the gate. And we come from different cultures and different families, and we didn't know each other that well, and so we easily could activate, you know, triggers, wounds, projections, misunderstandings, and that I just want to thank you for leaning into this relationship with me, and
Mm.
making space to include me in your life with your whole family. And honestly, I don't do much with their whole family. I have my relationship with Rachel now, and I have my relationship with each youngin. And so it's just interesting that like it's not just like, oh, we're all together. Like Rachel has that with some other aunties and uncles in the village, but not me. And so it's just fun to like be leaning in together and just acknowledging that it,
Mhm.
yeah, that there's, I appreciate you and love you.
The children are teachers,
Yeah.
you know? And I have always trusted my children's judgment in other humans. And they really have, yeah, like this connection was meant to happen. And I'm so grateful that they were like the catalyst in the crucible.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for showing up for that as well.
Well, I want to acknowledge that this is the second conversation in a series of 5 that we're doing under the theme of interdependence. And the next one is on land-based life and hand-built homes. We'll be getting into some of the bones and infrastructure and systems of Earthaven. So that's going to be pretty juicy if you can come to that.